We are looking now at the discussion of the witchcraft itself. Now, this here has many different forms, many different manifestations. Some of them, some of the people who practice black magic can use your name and do magic on it. Can use certain objects about yourself. So, like I mentioned, they'll use like your toothbrush or your sock or a piece of your hair or something, and they can perform black magic with that. Crystal balls as well they can use. The Ouija board that we have in our time, same idea is also used for black magic as well. Witchcraft is defined as sihr in Arabic, which is to show something other than what it is or what it should be. This is what sihr is defined, is to show something other than what it is or what it should be. And this here, automatically now it should paint a picture of what kind of issue we're dealing with. So for example, an example of a type of sihr, of course, actually we'll talk about that when we get to it, inshallah, in a few moments. Now, the types of sihr, we want to mention a couple of points here. The first type of, if you'd like, ways that magicians used to do sihr is a concept called al-iyafa. Al-iyafa is to read flight patterns. So basically, if a bird was going in different directions, you would read the pattern of that bird and how it was flying, and then you would determine or attach a superstition or a belief to that. So this is a type of sihr itself. So you look at that, and then as a result, you start obtaining omens and different things. So I don't know of any. I don't know if any of you guys might know, like in some traditions, that if a bird is flying east, it means that it's going to rain, and if they're flying west, then it means that there's no rain. So something along those lines. That's the first type. Another one is what we call at-tarqu. At-tarqu is drawing lines, especially drawing lines like on piece of paper or in the sand or in the dirt, and looking at certain patterns behind that. These, of course, all of these are haram, and as a matter of fact is a form of shirk. Then there are also other types that involve physical objects. So like the whole concept of good luck and bad luck attached to certain things. So for example, in some cultures, if a mirror breaks, it means like something bad is going to happen to you. Or what's the other one about throwing the salt on your left side or something like that? So all of these things here, in terms of good luck and bad luck, same idea is attached to them. Horoscopes as well fall under the same category. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned this to us in an authentic hadith, that the person who only reads any type of superstition, comment or sentence or anything along those lines, their salah would not be accepted for 40 days. This is authentic hadith. How do you interpret that? This is literally if a person goes to a sorcerer or a witchcraft or a psychic, and you just listen to what he or she has to say. You don't necessarily believe it, but you just listen. Prophet ﷺ says very clearly, "Man sami'a," whoever hears it alone will not have their salah accepted for 40 days. So if you happen to be flipping through the newspaper and you come across a horoscope, and if you're like a Scorpio or something, you just like, oh, okay, oh, that's interesting, and you just turn the page, according to some ulama, 40 days of your salah will not be accepted. That's how strict this is. Now, the question here is, I'm sure, I can see from the facial expressions of some of you, I know that this may have happened to maybe one of us, once upon a time. So the question here is, if this has happened to you, does that mean that 40 days of your salah does not count? Now here is where things get into a gray area. I mean, scholars differ on how this ruling is placed. I mean, what you don't know, some scholars say if you didn't know, then ask Allah to forgive you. Other scholars said, no exceptions to it. You have to just accept the fact that 40 days of your salah is not accepted by Allah. Obviously, you still have to pray. Don't get me wrong. A person can't just say, well, okay, they're not accepted, so forget about it. No, they still have to go through that, and they still should ask Allah for forgiveness throughout those 40 days. But the question here is, where does this leave you if you've had this problem? Wallahi, the best advice that I can give you is the advice that was given to me when I asked the same question. Just repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave it at that. Allah will judge you at the end. So if you were sincere about it, you honestly didn't know, then inshallah may Allah forgive you, and your salah is left between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. This here all falls under a certain field or science that is titled astrology, which is of course the study of these different things. Astrology is the study of the movement of the stars, the skies, the planets. So it's actually like a physical, sorry, this is astronomy. Astrology is your life is affected by the movements of these things. So if you see a shooting star, then you might say to yourself, oh my God, something great is going to happen to me. So the movements of these natural elements is going to affect you somehow. This is what astrology, this type of study is, as opposed to astronomy. Astronomy is to just study the movements of the planets in the sky and the horizon. This is permissible. There's no issue with that. It's just a physical science that you're studying. It's just something knowledge, and it doesn't have an issue there. In terms of the effects of sihr itself, the effects of this are both internal and external as well. They are both internal and external as well. So internally, a person might be very unstable in the way they think, because as a marriage counselor, these issues come to me very, very often. One of the easiest ways you know that you've been affected by sihr in your marriage is a sudden change of attitude or moods within the husband and wife. So for example, before they got married, they were happy, patient, relaxed. Whatever problems they were dealing with it just, normal, no big deal. So for example, if she came home and her mom or her dad or something, didn't have any food ready or anything like that, it was okay, no big deal. But the moment they got married, if he or she comes home and there's no food there, it's World War III. Right, you know what I mean? It's just a huge problem. He or she's gonna start breaking things, start screaming, start yelling, insult. Like their mood just flipped completely upside down. It's a very, very strong indication that somebody may have done sihr to that marriage. Here in this case, wallahi, I can tell you, just based on my own experience, it's 50-50. 50% of the cases end up being absolutely nothing, but just as much end up actually having some type of sihr attached to it. Remember, brothers and sisters, anytime you get married, there's always going to be somebody that's going to have some type of jealousy or hasad for you. Doesn't matter what age you get married, as long as you get married. For the youngsters, you have this, you're more vulnerable to this than anyone else. Just because you're young, you're good looking, she's practicing, she's beautiful, she has all of these qualities. So these two young, beautiful human beings get together. He's an alim, she's a scholar, she's a hafidh herself. They come together, people are going to do something, or you might be vulnerable to this. So the question here is, how do you protect yourself from all of this? We're going to talk to you about that inshallah shortly. So we have the internal, then we also have the external effect. What are the external effects of sihr? And we're going to also add jinn possession as well. How do you know, just by looking at somebody, that they are possessed? Now before I mention this, please, 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 do not go up to your friend and start analyzing them and seeing if they have a jinn or not, okay? So number one, leave this for a person who's an expert in this field. And I'm just going to throw this to you in a generic way. Number one is you're going to look for pink lips. Now these pink lips are not lips that are quote-unquote normal for this person. In other words, you know this individual that they never had these dark pink lips. Then all of a sudden one day you see these, pink, bloodshot red lips all of a sudden out of nowhere. And then you'll ask them, like, did you eat something? Are you allergic to something? They're like, no, everything's cool, everything's fine. First indication. So there are two types of lips we're talking about here. You naturally have pink lips, you're not possessed here in this case. As opposed to somebody who just wakes up one day, dark pink reddish lips. Number two, teeth that are stained. So teeth that have like brown stains, dark black stains, reddish stains, these again are not natural. If a guy or a person doesn't brush their teeth, that's a different issue, right? Doesn't keep themselves clean, that's another issue. We're talking about the person, generally speaking, has good hygiene, but these stains won't leave. And they go to the dentist, they try to get it cleaning, doesn't go away. This is another indication, okay? Secondly is the eyes itself. The eyes, basically, you would feel as though when you look into the eyes of that individual, you could see your reflection from them very, very clearly. So in other words, you'll see sort of like a watery gray glaze over the eyeball. So it's as if they're about to tear, but when they're blinking, there's no tears. But if you look at them and you're like, are you crying? You know, you look like you're about to tear. So you see like, some water, and you see that clear glaze over them. Again, this is another sign as well. Also, the pupil itself comes completely dark. So, I mean, this is actually really, like, it's pretty scary when you look at this part of it. I mean, it's rare, but it does happen to some people. Now, just mind you, all of these signs are different for every person that's possessed. Not every single person is going to have this. One may have that, the other one may have something else, or a little bit of each. When it comes to the eyes, you're also looking for the dark shades beneath the eyes as well. Dark black shades there. It's as if they've never slept for the longest time. The next one is the most common, and that is a strong odor. So a person just has a strong odor that it's very difficult to sit and stand beside them. Very, very difficult to talk to them one-on-one. So that strong odor, this is the most apparent one, because bad odor is perfume for the shayateen. So that's why they cause you to become unclean. That's why we are told that half of our deen is completed by how clean we keep ourselves. So this is why cleanliness is extremely important. It's an act of ibadah in and of itself. Another sign is a discoloration in the nails as well. So the raqi should be able to look for this. This discoloration in the nails is obviously on the fingers as well as the toes as well. The raqi, if he needs to, he can request to see this. Now, if it comes to a woman, he has to do it very carefully. You cannot just ask a woman who's possessed, let me see your feet, because it's her haqq and right that she protects that as part of her modesty. She's not going to show her feet to just anyone. This is why the ulama have difference of opinion whether a woman's feet is her awrah or not. So what you do here, the raqi has to be very careful how he does this. I've done this before, where if you ever have to see the feet, you will only expose the nails of her feet and nothing else. If it's an older woman, then some scholars permit that you can see her entire feet without her knowing about it. But when it comes to a younger woman, you can only expose her toes. So if this is her toes, you're basically going to hold a cloth or something there, and you're just going to see the toes itself. Look at them very briefly and look for that discoloration. What color is the discoloration? Two folds. It's either a dark yellowish color or brown itself. Another sign, inshallah, and this is the one that we will conclude with, is the skin itself. Generally, that person may have soft, tender, smooth skin, but that skin becomes very rough, very hard to handle. It's not comforting. So she wants to hold his hand, or he wants to hold her hand, and it's just uncomfortable. Really rugged skin. It just feels like, I don't even know what to compare it to, but you guys get the idea. There are many, many, many other physical indications of jinn possession, but I think inshallah we will pause here at least for the salah. So may Allah Azza wa Jal protect us from the shayateen, and inshallah after the salah we will conclude with this discussion of the witchcraft. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.